Hey everybody from Lost in Creation, this is Saz Ross, and today we have an incredible visual artist, Amanda Jane Bienko, and she is going to talk about her process, the fact that, she's a teacher and an artist, and we're going to dive into her aesthetic, her style, and learn more about her. And I just want to say this, before we go into this, I am wearing an original Amanda Jane Bienko beautiful tree ring print shirt, and it is like my favorite shirt that I own. So I want to welcome Amanda. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. I want to hear all about you. Where are you from, and how did you start making more art and developing this balance between teaching and art making?
Well, I guess, I'll start at the beginning. Um, I was just kind of, I guess, born creative. I was a creative child, and then I started making art when I became a teenager, and then I just didn't look back. And then I was like, okay, how do you make a career out of that? So I had a passion for explaining, like helping people. So I was like, okay, I'll go with the teacher route. So I went the teacher route, and then it was only last year that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it like a real go, where I'm gonna like sell my work and put it out there. And it's been like a crazy journey with that, but I've realized from it that you don't have to like, it's not all or nothing. Like when you're a kid and you talk about, oh, I want to be an artist, people are like, oh, that's not realistic. You can't do that. Like they make it seem like you have to be freaking Pablo Picasso or something, or else it's not going to work. And I'm like, no, you can have a full-time job and do your art on the side, or you can do part-time and part-time artists. Like there's so many possibilities and niches for it that they just don't delve into when they're like, pick your career in high school. So, yeah. That's what I've kind of been doing.
You're absolutely right about that. I felt like growing up, well, I grew up in New York, and not only was everything so competitive because no matter what you did, it was saturated. So many people. But nobody ever said to me that it was possible, and they never, even if they did, they didn't have faith, or they didn't have confidence in how they said it. They were like, you could do that and maybe starve, but yeah, if anything, like it just goes to show you, if you really have the passion for it, the drive and the motivation, you can do it. And yeah, if anything, that is so inspiring to hear, because the whole reason I even designed this group was to get people out of the mindset that those who can do teach, not can't. So I am so honored to have you here with us, and I want to see and have everyone else see some of the amazing work that you've done in this transition to artist. And if you want to share the screen right now, let's take a peek at some of the goodies that you have for us today.
Yeah, let's I'll pull up my Instagram here first. Are you seeing it?
I sure am.
Oh, perfect. All right, so I brought up my Instagram. I use my Instagram as like a way to get my artwork out there and promote my website. I sell from my website. So I'm heavily on Instagram. So that's always a great way to find me. So as you can see, my work, probably the things that shout out to you the most right now are colorful, nature oriented. I draw a lot of inspiration from nature and female spirituality, and how those two intermingle and connect. And I think you can obviously see that in my work. I'm mostly an illustrator, but I also have worked with fiber arts, hand sewn tapestries, as you can see like here. But I'm kind of going back to the illustrations. That's something that I always return to, is drawing. I always get obsessed with like a medium, and then I abandon it. And then I always end up going back to drawing. So yeah. And then a while back, I always knew about tree ring prints, but I was just like, oh yeah, they're cool. And then once I started to get more into like nature in my work, I was like, you know what, I want to try this. So I found a random stump, a random like chunk of a tree in the forest on a hike. And my dumbass, I was like, yeah, I can carry this back to the car. It was like full of water. It was so saturated. I carried it for over a mile.
Oh my God.
I was like dead by the time I got back to the car. But yeah, I got back to the car, dried it out, did the process, and yeah, and then I incorporated it into my art. I do straight tree ring prints, as you can see here. This one's like a rainbow one. I do it on clothes, and then I also have incorporated it into my actual illustrations. So you can see here, like this is an example, a tree ring print, and then I drew around it. So I like to look at it like it's a collaboration with nature. You know, this tree was once a living thing, but now it's dead, and I'm using it in my art. So it's like we're collaborating together with a piece of nature, and that just blows my mind.
Beautiful. And I love some of the portraiture that you've done. Looks like there are these floral imprints. Talk to me a little bit about how you're doing that.
Yeah, so I'll scroll back up. This is a good example right here. Flower pounding is, I don't know where it originated from. When I did my research, I came across a few things that pointed to the fact that it traces back to Native Americans, native to the United States, but I couldn't find any concrete evidence about that. But flower pounding is when you find flowers, and you can do this on fabric, you can do it on paper, and you take a hammer and you literally pound with the hammer the flowers and the dye from the flowers gets pushed into the fabric or the paper. So you're literally taking the dye from the flowers. That just started as an experiment, and then I kind of just went with it, and I liked that it gave the paper this natural texture, and it's, like I said, it's also like a collaboration with nature, you know, using these flowers to make my artwork. So yeah, there's how the nature is incorporated. Let me scroll down and I'll show you another one. So right here, everyone always thinks that this is watercolor, but it was actually a black iris flower.
Wow.
So it just had, I guess it had rained before I had found this black iris flower, and so I put it on the paper, and when I smashed it with the hammer, it just like exploded, and it made this like really beautiful watercolor effect.
Yeah.
You can see there.
I see it. It does look like watercolor.
Yeah, it does. It was wild when I like pulled back the paper towel and I saw what it had done. I was like, what? It's very interesting because the dye that you see in flowers is with your eye is not the dye that like is in the flower. Usually like there's no such thing as like pink dye. It's like purple.
Wow. So you could have a pink flower and be like, I'm going to get a pink artwork, and then you get purple.
Yeah, it's not, the flower can look as pink as anything, but that's like the color that's on the surface, and then what's actually like in the flower, the dye itself, is like a variation of purple.
That is so beautiful. I need to see a video of this process. I want to see this in action.
Do I have a video of it?
You know, if you don't, I'll be eagerly waiting until you make.
I wonder if I can click on my store. Oh, it wants me to sign in.
Oh, that's okay.
On my Instagram, in my story highlights, in the studio, I might have a video of me doing it, but I'm not sure.
Well, we're just gonna have to check that out. And for now, let's go out of screen share and talk a little bit more about you as an educator and how you've made strides in the community and how you've impacted, students from. I know that you've been working in Maryland for a while now, so I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so my journey as an art educator kind of has been all over the place. As you know, we went to Towson together. That's how we met. And then I taught for 2 years in Prince George's County at a high school. And then I completely changed it up and I went overseas and I taught in an international school in Morocco. And that was wild for lots of reasons. And then I actually wanted to leave teaching. I got my degree in inclusive arts practice, which you can relate to art education, but it can be more about incorporating art into the community from an inclusive aspect. So it kind of left me more open-ended, but then I decided to go back to teaching part-time so that I could do my artwork part-time as well. So I've kind of been all over the place with my art education. I'm not gonna lie, I find art education extremely frustrating. I love teaching, but as you know, there's just so much red tape with teaching.
Yes, yes. It is
Yeah.
definitely frustrating. And, I like your raw honesty about that because, I think a lot of people who think about art education might have an idea. Maybe they think it could be even easier since it's not a tested subject, but in a lot of ways that is so untrue. And, I think even ever since we graduated, right? Like over the last 10 years, education's really evolved. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of the, I guess state mandated practices put in place has restricted elements of artists, or even teachers who are creative about teaching. It's kind of stripped them from that. And, with us, it's sort of like, we're creating this inclusive atmosphere where we have to, cater to oversized classrooms and, have this like one size fits all. And it's anything but, with very little support. And it's just, it's just the reality of it. But, I want to hear a little bit about Morocco. How was that experience? Like, I need to know more about it.
Yeah, definitely. So, whenever people ask me this question, I'm always like, how the hell do I answer this? So Morocco was the most challenging thing I had ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And it's sort of what made me return to art. Because when I made the decision to leave my community. I did that on my own. And when I was over there, like, I went myself. The school I taught at was an American school, so most of the teachers were fellow Americans, so I had that community. But I stripped myself of my community, and I didn't realize how much of my identity was wrapped up in that. So I had a legit identity crisis when I was over there. And how I got through it, I mean, I did the best I could, but I went back to what I know, and I was like, you're an artist. I know that. So you're spiritual. I know that. So every day I committed to drawing for at least 5 minutes a day and doing yoga for at least 5 minutes a day. And if I wanted to extend it, I extended it. But I committed to that, and that returned me to having this creative side. Because when you're an artist, you wax and wane with it. When your creative juices are flowing and when they're not. And I think that in itself is something that's needed. But yeah, that sort of that journey returned me to being an artist, and because it was all I had. Like that was all I had when I was over there. That was like, this is what I know of myself.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of returned me to it. And yeah, that journey. And then I lived in England for a year after that to get my master's degree. And that master's degree was the best decision I ever did for my artistic career, because it gave me the confidence to be like, no, I am an artist. I'm a professional artist. This is what I do. This is how I do it, and I can do anything I want. I'm an artist. So that was also the best decision I had ever made. So, and then I came back and I was like, hey, I'm an artist. Let's do this.
I love that. And sometimes even saying it out loud, even though it's like, oh, that's cheesy. No, I think if anything, it's empowering. Like, we need to say it out loud. And, that's what's going to give us pride and motivation to just continue and push forward. So, listening to you and your journey, your international journey, is just so inspiring, especially for people that may be feeling like, a loss of identity, or maybe, someone who feels a little trapped in what they're, what they have going on. So I really appreciate and respect you sharing that with us. So before I leave, I know that you mentioned teaching being, it is frustrating, but what would you say is like probably the most rewarding part of, being invested in the community in that way?
Well, I got into teaching because when I was a teenager, being creative saved me. I grew up in a rural town. My parents were always extremely supportive. I'm so blessed by them. But I grew up in a rural town because of my father's job. He worked with farmers, and there just wasn't a lot of creativity going on. There wasn't, a lot of that. So I found my niche in being creative, and I was bullied and all those other things. And then when I found the art room, I just flourished. I fell in love, and that was my safe space, away from people bullying me. It was, I always say that, like, art became my sword and my shield. Like it was what it just, it fueled me. And so I wanted to be that for a kid, because I knew that changed my life completely, what my art teacher did in high school. So I wanted to be that for a kid. So that's what made me do it, because I was like, I know there's going to be a me out there that needs me.
Throw on that hero cape and here you come. I love that. Whoa. I mean, and it's so funny because, like, when you started answering the question, I was like, this always has like a deeply rooted meaning to it, right? It's not just, oh, I want to help others get creative. No, like it really comes from a deeper place.
Yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
It's more instinctual, and for educators, it's like, you're not doing it for the money, you're doing it for the heart. And
Yeah.
it really is such a beautiful thing to think about. When you are entering a classroom, you're fostering this creative environment, and you're creating a safe space for these people, for these kids to take creative risks. So
definitely, yeah.
Thank you for that. And I want to say that it's just been such a joy talking to you and seeing you. And, I have to say, even as a good friend, like, your work is so beautiful. And yeah, anyone watching this gives a look at Amanda Jane Bienko on Instagram. Give her some love. She is such an incredible artist and person, and your journey has been such a wonder to be part of and watch. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, my lady.
Yes, and I can't wait to see you continue your artistic journey. And yeah, we'll keep an eye out.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. I'm so proud that you're doing this. I think this is awesome.
Oh, just trying new things,
Yeah, that's what it's all about. You got to just try it, man.
Yep. If anything, what's the harm? But thank you again for coming, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds great.